That's why we have such great items in there as $4 billion for smoking cessation and obesity counseling. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think we have a problem with unemployed smoking coaches. We got $24 million in there for tax breaks for Hollywood film manufacturers to buy film. Last time I saw there were plenty of people standing in line at the movie theaters. We got $650 million in there for digital television box conversion coupons. I think we got a lot of unemployed television repairmen who's experts in digital TV. We got $400 million for the Centers for Disease Control to study sexually transmitted diseases. Now that's stimulating, but in a certain different way. We got $1 billion in the stimulus bill for the U.S. Census, which occurs in the year 2010. We got $50 million for the National Endowment for the Arts. We got unemployed artists and artisans is go buy some of their work. We got $54 billion in the stimulus bill for programs that the Office of Management and Budget or the General Accounting Office say are programs that are, quote, ineffective and cannot pass financial audits. And we're giving them $54 billion more. We got $30 million in there for the preservation of the small marsh harvest mouse. I don't know many salt marsh harvest mice that are unemployed. And we only got $30 billion in there for infrastructure. 5% of the total bill is for infrastructure, for roads and bridges. And not only that, but the whole bill is based upon a flawed premise. And that premise is contained in a report by the Council of Economic Advisors designated chairman. She wrote it before she came into office, issued it about January 10th, Christine Romer. And it defended the $787 billion monstrosity by saying the following, that for every dollar in stimulus spending, America would see $1.50 of economic growth. If that's true, why the heck did we stop at $787 billion? Why don't we just say $2 trillion worth of stimulus spending? Because that would mean we'd get $3 billion worth of economic growth. We could pay for it in less than a year and repeat it next year and ad nauseum. Well, there's a reason why. And that is that no country, no nation has been able to spend its way to prosperity. Economists will tell you that every dollar that you spend on stimulus spending, depending on if you got the best kind, the most efficient kind, is going to generate you at most no more than 83 cents worth of growth. Stimulus spending is robbing the future to stimulate the current economy. And we might need to do that, but only if it is targeted, temporary, and timely. And this bill was none. Then they turned around and compounded the problem by passing an omnibus spending bill for the last 6 months of this fiscal year to fund everything from March to October. $410 billion. It represented an 8% increase in the baseline of discretionary domestic spending of the government in 1 year, 8%. Do you know what the increase in discretionary domestic spending of the government has been for the last 4 years? Less than 1% per year and overall flat. The FY08 fiscal budget, for example, was $391 billion discretionary spending. The FY09 budget for the first half of this year was at the rate of 393. That's less than inflation. This thing is $413 billion, and that means this. If you take the spending that was in the stimulus bill and the spending that's in the omnibus bill, next year's baseline discretionary domestic spending number could be as high as $714 billion. Think about that. We go from $391 billion in FY08 to $413 billion in FY09 to $710 billion to $714 billion in FY10. That is why we've got the budget problem we got coming. Because this is part of an overall plan by the Obama administration. As the president says, his budget is, quote, inseparable from lasting prosperity. I think it's probably inseparable from lasting lack of prosperity. Because what he's asking for is a $4 trillion budget for the government this year that will be equal to 28.5% of the GDP in 1 year. The last time we saw spending be that big a part of the gross domestic product was at the height of World War II. Spending then slows for 3 years under the Obama plan and then accelerates for the next 7 years faster than the economy. We're going to grow the government for 7 years faster than the economy. And at the on an annual basis, that means the size of the federal government will be a quarter larger than it is today. That will require $1.9 trillion in taxes, just simply under the Obama plan, which actually turns out to be $3.1 trillion worth of taxes when you put the true cost of the carbon tax in. And even at the end of that period of time, we will have doubled the national debt in 5 years and nearly tripled it in 10 years to $9.3 trillion. Today, our national debt is roughly about 30% of the GDP. Last year it was about 25% of the GDP. Under the Obama plan, it will be 85% of the GDP by year 2019. You know when the last time was that we had that? The height of World War II. Now what does that mean? What that means is we're going to have more debt piled up in the next 10 years than Barack Obama inherited from George Washington to George W. Bush in the next 5 years, and then double it again, triple it, in just over 5 years after that. This ought to worry us. The smart people I'm talking to look at the cost of U.S. Treasuries and say the market is predicting a 12% chance of a default on U.S. government obligations. Standard & Poor's did a report a couple of weeks ago. Not much attention was paid to it. A lot of attention should be paid to it. U.S. Treasury today are rated 3A, AAA, highest rating possible. The Standard & Poor report said if we follow through on this economic plan, and the finances of the United States government are handled in this fashion, by 2016, we'll lose the AAA status. By 2022, we'll have an A bond rating. That's what Greece has got today. And by 2030, we'll have junk bond status for the United States Treasury.